5 disturbing internet mysteries solved by Reddit.
2022, at around 3 p.m., 10-year-old Lily Peters left her home to visit her aunt on her own. The aunt's house was just a 3-minute bike ride from Lily's home in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. And since she lived with just her father, Alexander, after her parents' divorce, Lily often went to her aunt's house on the weekends to play around. So it wasn't unusual for her to make this journey on her own. Unfortunately, what started off as an ordinary weekend was about to end in a horrific tragedy. Things took a turn for the worse when Alex noticed that it was getting dark and Lily still hadn't come home. It wasn't like her to stay out late. He called his sister, assuming Lily was still at her place. But, to his surprise, she told him Lily had already left over an hour ago. He then called the parents of Lily's friends, hoping she might have stopped at one of their houses on her way back. However, none of them had seen her either. Fearing for the safety of his daughter, Alex began searching the route Lily would have taken to and from her aunt's house. He also contacted the police and reported his daughter missing at around 9 p.m. While the authorities didn't issue an Amber Alert, they quickly formed a search party to help look for her in the surrounding area. And after hours of searching, Alex finally discovered the first clue to his daughter's whereabouts: her bike, abandoned in a nearby wooded area.
Oh God.
But Lily herself was nowhere to be found. Police deployed drones and rescue dogs to search the woods and investigate the hiking trail that ran through the area. Then, at around 8:45 a.m., Alex received the news he had been dreading all night. Lily was deceased. A volunteer had discovered her body hidden under a pile of leaves just a few feet from the trail.
Jesus!
After a brief examination, police ruled her death a homicide and began looking for the perpetrator. Unfortunately, they had nothing that could lead them in the right direction. That is, until someone made a post about Lily's case in the true crime subreddit. While everyone else was speculating on what could have happened to Lily, user HomesliceNation4 came forward with a crucial piece of information in a now deleted comment that read, "What's scary is I was playing Pokemon Go in the park that day and walking along that very same trail. My stomach turns when I think that I saw that girl in a pink/purple hoodie on her bike with another kid on my way out. I have a suspicion that it could be another kid that did it." Another user called the police tip line to report HomesliceNation4's comment. And to everyone's surprise, this was the breakthrough the investigators needed to solve the case. Because just a few hours later, police arrested Carson Peters Berger, Lily's 14-year-old cousin, as the prime suspect in her murder. Not long after he was taken into custody, Carson admitted to everything.
What the
However,
fuck?
just what happened to Lily that night was more horrifying than anyone could have ever imagined. According to Carson, he followed Lily.
Okay, dude. I don't want the details, man.
As she was heading home and told her to follow him into the woods. He'd been planning this for months. Once they were off the trail, he punched her in the stomach, hit her several times with a
Do we need that information?
large stick and strangled her until she took her final breath. He then went back home as if nothing had happened. But when he heard about the search for Lily, he panicked and went back into the woods to move her body further from the crime scene and hid it under a pile of leaves. Though, all thanks to one Reddit—
Why use that picture? Why? Mr. whatever, creepy, chilling scares. Why use that picture?
comment, he was thankfully caught. Given the severity of his crimes and the fact that it was all premeditated, prosecutors decided to try Carson as an adult. He's still in custody, awaiting his trial set for sometime in 2026.
Wow.
On May 1st, 2013, Reddit user ShadyBusiness15 posted on the What Is This Thing subreddit, seeking answers for a strange device he found inside his power strip. The post read, "Violently blew a fuse in my extension cord, took it apart to see the damage, and found this inside." Alongside this, the OP shared pictures of 2 circuit boards connected to each other with wires, and what appeared to be a SIM card. He also cross-posted this in the Reddit Bureau of Investigation subreddit, where users noticed a microphone on one of the circuit boards and figured this was a spying device of some kind. With one comment providing more details about how it worked, stating, "Your extension cord is a room bug. Someone calls the phone number on that SIM and the extension cord auto-answers and listens to the room." Put simply, one of the circuit boards was a cut-down version of a phone that used the SIM to transfer audio from the built-in microphone. The second board was a power delivery module, allowing the device to run directly off of the wall power without needing any batteries. However, this raised more questions than it answered, especially about the OP's true identity, with some users speculating if he was involved in some shady business.
Yeah.
After all, why else would someone go through the effort of planting a bug to listen in on his conversations? But according to a later comment, he was just a normal university student who was living in the university's dorms, and that he took this extension cord from his home when he moved. But also mentioned that there are other people with access to his room who could have planted the bug without his knowledge. With this, the focus shifted towards finding out who planted this in the OP's power strip and why. Some users suggested putting the SIM in a spare phone, but doing so only deepened the mystery further. Apparently, it had a 10-pound credit, suggesting that it was being used at some point. However, it didn't have any contacts, voicemails, or call logs. And judging from the network messages, the device...
Maybe they tested it on him or someone random? Yeah, it could be. Could be like an engineer college student doing some weird shit.
...been active since October 2012. This also helped the OP retrieve the SIM's number, but calling it returned an automated message stating, "The service is now closed, and if you have voicemail, you can turn it on." Nothing else. The OP tried leaving it active in a spare phone as well, but even after days of waiting, he didn't receive any calls or messages. It's possible the person who planted it had already gotten the information they needed, or perhaps they found out the OP had discovered it and decided to back off. In either case, the OP's only remaining option was to contact the SIM's carrier, O2. Unfortunately, they weren't much help either. He would have needed a police warrant to access the call logs, something he didn't want to deal with. Without access to the call
I'd want to deal with that because, you know, the potential that someone's spying on me.
Logs, the only real suspects OP had were his own parents. However, he didn't find the spy SIM's number in either of their phones when he checked later. This left a single possibility that's also the most likely explanation for the whole thing. Put simply, the spy device was never meant for the OP in the first place. As many on Reddit hypothesized, the bug was likely intended and used for corporate espionage at some point. From there, it somehow found its way into the OP's home. Maybe one of his parents brought it home from work or purchased it in a corporate clearance sale without realizing what it actually was. But by then, the device had already fulfilled its purpose and wasn't being used. Unfortunately, while Redditors were quick to identify and solve what the device was, they weren't able to find a concrete answer for who planted it and why.
Yeah, that's creepy.
The last
as
update
shit.
from the OP was in May of 2013. Chances of getting an answer now, over 12 years later, are practically zero. On the morning of August 9, 2018, 66-year-old Susan Rainwater set out on her usual cycling route in Eatonville, Washington. But unlike the countless times she'd followed this routine, that day she didn't come home on time. Worried, her husband David Rainwater went out.
Dude, I hate that, like, I feel like women always need to have someone with them at all times.
Looking for her, only to come face to face with the aftermath of a tragic accident. Just off the side of the road, David discovered the mangled remains of his wife's bicycle.
Oh!
As he got closer, he saw an injured Susan lying on the ground, not far from the bike. Sadly, it was already too late. Susan had succumbed.
Was it a hit and run?
To her injuries and passed away before David could get to her. He eventually gathered himself enough to call the police, who after examining Susan and her surroundings were able to piece together what had happened. And according to their investigation, this was a classic hit-and-run case. Susan was likely struck from behind by a fast-moving car, resulting in her getting severely injured. However, instead of stopping and helping Susan, the suspect decided to save himself and fled the scene.
Oh my god. No one else drove by?
Unfortunately, there were no witnesses or nearby CCTV cameras, leading investigators with no leads to
No one drove by?
follow. The only clue they found on the crime scene was this one piece of black plastic that likely broke off of the suspect's car from the collision. Investigators tried their best, but they weren't able to figure out what this was supposed to be, let alone what car it belonged to. With no other options, one of the troopers at the scene turned to the internet for help, stating, "Troopers and detectives are still looking for a black vehicle believed to be involved in this morning's tragic bicyclist fatality. If you know anything regarding this collision, please call the Washington State Patrol." While this post received little attention on Twitter, someone reposted the query on the What Is This Thing subreddit, where it went viral and received valuable input from hundreds of users. And it didn't take long for Redditors to figure out that this piece came from the car's headlight bezel, as it had the notch used to access the headlight adjusting screws.
How the hell do people figure that shit
Figuring
out?
out what car this belonged to was still going to be a tall order. After all, there are dozens of manufacturers with hundreds of different models. Not to mention aftermarket parts, which would have been practically impossible to track down. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, the post reached perhaps the only person capable of identifying the suspect's car model from that tiny broken piece. 2 hours after the original post was made, user Jeff's Nuts dropped a comment that
Of course, dude. It's always a Jeff, and it's always nuts. Dude, the Jeffs in the world, I swear to God, man. Like the one Jeff who pointed out that that kid was dead. We need Jeff. We need Jeff's nuts, man.
Handedly brought the search to a close.
Break like nuts?
As it turned out, Jeff was a state inspector in Maryland, where his job was to make sure vehicles were up to code before issuing registration. So he'd seen his fair share of headlight bezels at work. And according to him, the piece police found belonged to a 1988 Chevy Silverado. After spotting the resemblance, users forwarded the
that looks like the type of truck that someone would hit and run somebody with.
Information to the investigators, prompting a search for a vehicle that matched this new description. Then, just 5 days later, the state trooper announced what everyone was waiting for. They had located the vehicle that struck Susan and arrested its owner. The man responsible for her death was 37-year-old Jeremy Thomas.
Oh yeah, he looks like a stand-up guy.
He first claimed that he had fallen asleep at the wheel and thought that he'd hit a deer instead of a person.
Yeah, right.
However, his story later changed to where he knew he hit a person, but didn't get out to help because he, quote, did not want to see a body. It was
Oh, that's a great excuse. That's solid.
Clear he was just making excuses, since authorities also found a small bag of hard drugs in his car, suggesting he may have been under the influence at the time of the crash. In the end, he was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. Not exactly a harsh penalty for a
4.5 years for murdering someone while driving under the influence? How is that not a murder charge?
deadly hit and run, but it is better than nothing. Especially considering that if the Reddit user Jeff hadn't identified the make and model of Simon's vehicle and posted his findings to Reddit, there's a good chance he would have gotten away with it entirely. In October 2024, someone noticed that one of their electrical outlets in their home looked different from the others. It looked like it had a camera inside, but it wasn't super obvious. So they turned to Reddit and posted photos of the outlet, hoping someone would either confirm or deny their suspicions. They also explained their situation further in a comment reading, "I've had a stalker in my apartment broken into in the past. I got a camera detector for peace of mind, not knowing it would read anything, but it led me to this and detected radio waves and reflected back with the infrared. The bottom ground looks different than the other GFCI plugs in the rest of the complex."
Yeah, that looks like a lens.
Right away, several people agreed with the OP and that something was definitely off about the outlet. Then, just 40 minutes after the post went up, one user confirmed the OP 100% had a hidden camera in their home by tracking down the exact model for sale online. And according to its product,
why would you? I mean, I guess for like a camera in your house, I guess, but why would you need? Why not just get a regular camera? Why do they even sell these? This seems stupid.
Page, it's a wireless camera.
Nanny cam? Then buy a nanny cam. Buy a nanny cam. Why do you need a camera that's disguised as an outlet?
Camera that could transmit 4K video completely over Wi-Fi. Given the OP's history with a stalker, the same person was likely behind installing the hidden camera as well. Many strongly suggested the OP get out of the house and call the police. Unfortunately, what happened next remains a mystery. The account that made the post was a throwaway the OP created solely for this purpose. And after confirming their suspicions,
should be illegal?
they never posted any new updates.
I don't see a purpose for it except spying on people.
In July of 2012, user Delver of Secrets Reddit account made a post in r/askreddit looking for answers on a strange encounter they recently had. It stated, "Today, a homeless-looking man handed me $50 and this note. Do any of you have any idea what it means? Dear Reddit, I work in New York City and was dragged into a very curious situation today. I was taking the 1 train from Midtown to the financial district, and as usual the train was pretty packed. I bumped into a raggedy dressed man as we got on, and he shot me a quick smile. I thought nothing of it until he went to get off at 14th Street and he handed me a $50 bill along with a note. Before I could even open my mouth to ask him a question, he was gone. Below you find pictures of both the front and back of the note. I've been looking at the note all day, and needless to say, I have no idea what it means. It's handwritten on a 3x3
Is this just like a what's it called?
Square piece of paper
ARG?
with no identifying marks and no watermarks. There's a hand-drawn grid, and at a couple of spots the cells of the grid are combined. The note has random characters written throughout it, and the bottom quarter is filled with random shapes and numbers. Maybe I'm just reading way too far into things, and he was just another crazy New Yorker, but I figured it would be neat to see if anyone has run into this similar situation. Do any of you have any idea as to what the note says, if anything? After taking a good look at both the note and the $50 bill, some users figured out that the note was what's known as a bifid cipher. and deciphering it revealed a message that read, "There's plenty more money to make. Figure this out and prepare to meet July 19, 56 and 6 hot dog stand outside Rue 57 Cafe. Ask for Mr. Input." However, before anyone had the time to figure out the true meaning behind this note, Delver of Secrets received a coded message on Reddit. It was likely from the same guy that handed him the note earlier that day. When decoded, this message read, "You have managed to find the message with the help of friends. You changed the rules, now so will I. July 12, 4 p.m. Find the Blue Jay at 6.5 and 56 and tell him you are the last."
What?
This was packed with clues pointing in multiple directions.
Yeah, this is fake. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is just like an ARG situation.
Starters, 6.5 and 56 corresponded to 6.5 Avenue on 56th Street in New York. And at that location, there was a salon named Gotham Skincare. This led many to believe that this whole thing was a marketing stunt for something related to Batman, especially since the date given in the original note, July 19th, was one day short of the release date for The Dark Knight Rises. One person even called the marketing company for that movie in hopes of getting them to admit the truth.
So basically, I was one of the people who got caught up in the whole homeless man give me $50. We had to figure out some sort of code. So after staying up for hours and reading all the comments, I definitely came to the conclusion that this reeks of marketing campaign. And I have a sneaking suspicion that it's a certain company. Hey guys, what's up? Alright, so it's 9:16 here in New York, and I'm about to call Leveraged Marketing Corporation of America. If you look up the address that we're all supposed to meet at later today at 4, this is actually a marketing agency that's right next to it, so it just makes sense that it might be them. And the Dark Knight thing just makes sense too, because the movie's coming out.
Well, that's boring.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm calling to make sure that everything is going to be set up for the Dark Knight campaign later today.
What is the Dark Knight campaign in New York City?
Yeah, it's actually right next to your office at about 4 o'clock today, actually.
I see. Yes, I know what that is. Please give Margie a call. I'm traveling.
He just admitted to knowing about it.
Oh.
I don't know. You figure it out.
Well, that's boring.
While this didn't lead to anything substantial, Reddit users found the next clue hidden within the Reddit message. You see, the username that sent the message was 222-0944379. One user converted this to an IP address, and it led to Fort Huachuca in Arizona, a military base that's primarily focused on intelligence training. So, could it be that Delver of Secrets was being recruited as a spy or something along those lines?
No.
For some, this was certainly a possibility. However, another user discovered that a spy exhibition
I feel like this is wishful thinking to make it more entertaining.
Was happening at the nearby Discovery Times Square Museum on July 12th. Maybe this was a marketing stunt for that instead. But this idea was also shot down by another user who claimed to work for the museum, stating that they had nothing to do with this.
Was the homeless man Batman?
With no other leads, a group of curious New York-based Redditors decided to meet at the specified location on July 12th to see if anything would actually happen. However, despite dozens of people showing up, including Delver of Secrets, no one noticed anything out of the ordinary and had to go back in disappointment. Now, if this was some legitimate espionage-related matter, a large crowd would have instantly scared off anyone planning to meet Delver of Secrets at that location. So, the whole thing was kind of pointless in that regard. But on the other hand, the gathering all but confirmed that this wasn't some marketing stunt. Because if it were, the media attention and large crowd would have been the perfect moment for a big reveal that never happened. Then, something happened that no one saw coming. On July 13th, Delver of Secrets removed everything from his post and replaced it with a single ominous passage reading, "Received a phone call today threatening violence against me and my family, going as far as to name members of my family and their addresses unless I delete this post. The caller also told me..."
No, this is just, you had no way to like finish it off, and so you copped out.
Not to show up on the 19th and to inform anyone planning to show up on the 19th that nothing would happen. This will be my last message to this account before I delete it. I'll also be changing my number later today. I'm sorry if a resolution to this never happens, but I'm not willing to risk my family's safety for a few extra dollars. With that, Delver of Secrets vanished from the internet. While Reddit did solve layers of coded messages and uncover clues hidden within other clues, they were ultimately left with nothing but speculation and an unsolved...
It was just a fun little code game that dude came up with, and he got a lot of people involved, and then he realized that there isn't gold at the end of the rainbow, and so he just copped out and said, "No, my family, they're threatening Kill me. Come on. It's just an ARG.
mystery.
It's fun, but like, you know, it's an ARG.